my name is Paul McKenna. I'm one of the assistant chiefs for Seattle PD. Currently over special operations and also currently over operations because of some org changes. But this project was mine, so that's why I'm here tonight. Thank you for being here on a Friday night before a long 3-day weekend. You have a 3-day weekend, I know. But it really was designed to try to get the information out as quickly as possible. And so we took the night. So between evenings being booked, my schedule, which is not pretty, and other schedules like Monty's, this is the first day that we could get where it all worked, and so we're making it work just to try to get the information out there. So, sorry if it's an inconvenience. We'll try to be as quick as we can and answer any questions that we have here at the end of the presentation. What I'm going to try to do tonight is tell you a little bit about what we're doing, and then have Monty come up and tell you some of the more technical aspects of the program, and then I'll come back up at the end for questions and answers. If it's a really pressing question, feel free to ask, but honestly, a lot of the questions get answered either by me or by Monty as we move along, and then anything that's not answered kind of all comes together. If it's okay, go ahead and ask them at the end, and then we'll go ahead and press on. So what we're here today to talk about is what we call the port security project. It's a port wireless mesh. It's two components. It has a wireless communication capability where we can send data and information back and forth. And then we can also use it with up to 30 cameras on the waterfront, and it can send and receive real-time video. And so I think that's probably why most people are here, because of the video aspect of it. The system is for police, fire, city Department of Transportation, the U.S. Coast Guard, and it's overseen by our City Department of Information Technologies. And I think that once Monty talks about some of the privacy aspects that we have in place and some of the rules, I'll talk about for use, audit, access, those kind of things, after he talks about the technical stuff. But we felt that if Monty went ahead and gave you the background on the system itself, then that would give you a better chance to either ask more detailed questions as to what was going on, or might even answer some of your questions ahead of time. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Monty. Yeah.
Good evening, I'm Monty Moss, a detective with the Seattle Police Department, Special Operations Bureau, and I also want to thank you for being here this evening. Go over this, and Chief McKenna said I think a lot of the questions will be answered during the presentation, but we'll take any of your questions that come up. So, I want to start off by explaining what is a mesh network, because that's the heart of this project. A mesh network is similar to a cell phone network. As you're going down the road, for example, on your cell phone, being a passenger in the car, of course, there's two-way communication going between your phone and the cell tower. But as you move down the road, you're going to be out of range of one cell tower to come into the range of another cell tower. So there's that handoff that takes place, and in most circumstances, we don't notice that. So what this is a Wi-Fi network that works in the same way. Because we're in a patrol car or a fire truck moving down the road, we'll be exchanging data with one access point, and then we'll get into the range of the next access point, and the system will hand off the computer communication to the next access point. What's beneficial about that? I'll give some more examples later, but it gives us control of the network. It's not something that we have to share with consumers as we use the cell networks now. So we get to have as much bandwidth as we need. We don't get kicked off if there's too many people trying to use it at one time. What this illustrates is that 2.4 gigahertz is something you might recognize. It's a Wi-Fi frequency like you have at your house, just off-the-shelf normal Wi-Fi. 4.9 gigahertz is another wireless network. It's licensed and it's restricted for public safety use. So that's another frequency that we're able to use. And then the access points talk to each other on the 5 gigahertz frequency, so that the information can go from one access point, talk to the next access point, and eventually connect to fiber, where it goes back to the server room.
The 5 gigahertz is also available for public use. That's also a public spectrum.
Yes,
4.8.
correct.
But
5.8, and that's something that we're seeing more of. Wi-Fi routers at home and stuff are starting to count up that. Yeah. So we started some proof of concept projects back in 2009, where we were able to evaluate this technology, use it in a variety of circumstances. One of them was Gaston Park on the 4th of July, where we had 50,000 people come together in a small area. When we had our network so that we were able to communicate and stuff with that as opposed to rely on the cell network. Every year at Gasworks Park, the cell networks go down because there's just too many people in a small space, so that inhibits the communication with the police department and fire department using the computers in the park. So that was a valuable test for us. We did a similar test at Seattle Center New Year's Eve, where we were able to maintain a computer connection despite a lot of people coming into one spot. At that point, we started applying for grants, and we began working with Seattle Fire, Seattle Department of Transportation, City Light, and King County Metro, because this is a network that can be useful to many different departments, not just the police department. So when we started applying for grants in 2010, we were awarded a port security grant in November 2011. We started on a bid process soon after that, but it took us through May of 2012 before the contract was finally awarded. At this point, all 158 of the wireless access points have been installed. 28 cameras will be installed. We're just missing one at this point because we're waiting for a pole that was cracked to be replaced, and then we'll install the camera in that location. Two of the locations that we talked about before that we had cameras at, one would have been just outside of here at the park, and then one at the Coast Guard Lighthouse in West Seattle. Those cameras will not be installed. We have a multi-agency and multi-department steering group, and that group will help guide some of the ways we use the network and make decisions. And we're working closely with Mayor again and City Council staff as we finalize the policy and use for this network, including camera use. This slide shows the area in downtown Seattle that will have network coverage. Basically, Broad Street to the north, 4th Avenue along the east, South King Street on the south side, and Alaskan Way along the waterfront. There's also a route on James Street that goes up to 9th Avenue and down to Jefferson Street. And this leg specifically to ensure that Seattle Fire has connectivity while the medic units are arriving in Harborview. And I'll bring a little bit more of that as we go. These are approximate locations of the cameras downtown. And I say approximate because the construction of the seawall and the tunnel have thrown everything into a mess. Even the plans that we had in the spring for camera locations that can change. So they're temporary locations, even the locations that you see them at now, within the next few months they'll be moved because they're moving city infrastructure farther east to accommodate seawall construction. But they're generally spread out between Broad Street to the north and Yesler on the south end. These are the cameras in the north end. There's one on Magnolia Bridge that overlooks the cruise ship terminal. There's one on Harbor Patrol Station, one on the Fremont Bridge, two on the Ballard Bridge, and those cameras will be used every day by the bridge operators so that they can help survey the traffic. That's on the bridge before they open. Fremont Bridge does have existing cameras. I would say they're not very good, but they do have existing cameras. And there are no cameras at the Ballard Bridge. So the two up there, one will be on either side of the bridge opening, so the operator can see on either side of the bridge when the bridge is open. And there are two cameras at the Ballard locks. There's reader boards at the ends here of the lock facility, and that's where the cameras are at. There's one more that's not mapped, and that's the camera that will be at Shoal Avenue and Shoal Place, which is south of the entrance to the park. And that's one that we're waiting for the pole to be replaced. These are the cameras in West Seattle. There's one at the Ballard Terminal, one at 63rd Beach Drive. This illustrates the camera at the Coast Guard Lighthouse that is not going to be installed. 61st in Alki, 57th in Alki, the north end of Darn Armini boat ramp, in that parking area there. Get these backwards. I think this one's outside of roughly Salties. This one's outside of the West Seattle Water Taxi. This is at the Admiral Viewpoint. And then these are along Spokane Street, outside of the shipping terminals. This is what a wireless access point looks like. The tall antennas are for the 2.4 gigahertz access. The shorter antennas here are for the 4.9 gigahertz access. There's two antennas on each access point. It's called a MIMO system, or multiple input, multiple output system, which allows us to take advantage of the way the radio frequencies bounce in the downtown area in particular off of brick and steel. It actually makes the system work better. In the past, that's been a hindrance. And then these flat panels here are the 5 gigahertz antennas that speak to the other access point. This is what the camera housing looks like. We standardized on the design so that it's easily recognizable. Gives us room inside of the housing to put equipment that we need to support the camera. I'm going to start a video here in just a moment. It's a minute long. And this is, we're going to show the camera moving about zooming in and zooming out. And it's also going to illustrate the privacy masking that these cameras have, which was a requirement from the beginning. And I'll talk through that. So what the privacy masking is, it allows us at the camera to designate areas that we don't want recorded. So we customize that per site. It's illegal for us to look into people's windows. I want to do that, I'm going to do that. So we're going to block them out from the get-go. The way people will view the cameras is through the DVR. So the camera will feed the image to the DVR, and then we'll log into the DVR to see the camera. And why that's important is that these areas that are blocked out or blacked out are recorded that way. There's no way after the fact to go back and remove the mask. So we have a similar system.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Can I ask a question? I thought at our last meeting that we talked about the masking could be removed if there was an ongoing event at the time.
If there were a child being held hostage and the camera could potentially see into that situation, and we have an assistant chief that makes that decision, then yes, we could log into the camera and remove that masking for that event. But it would take something that serious to do it.
And it would take that level, that is a written policy.
Yeah, that's part of the policy.
How quickly, how long would that take?
If I'm at work, minutes. If I'm not, it could be an hour or more. And,
Who else has the authorization to do that for the training?
I'm the only one that has a training on the department for that. My sergeant will probably be the only other person that can do that. There's only going to be a couple of people.
And that would be heavily documented, the fact that the masking was removed for
Absolutely. Yeah, that's something that we would want to make sure is understood and we're not hiding. Yes, sir.
Would that documentation be done by a right-only locking system, an automated system?
We would
How is documentation by writing down?
Both. So the system has an audit log. Anytime someone logs into the DVR, that's captured. Anytime they go to a camera and move it, that's captured for the length of time that they're on that camera. That's recorded. And we'll be keeping those logs for 90 days. Those logs will be subject to audit. We have a civilian board that may be put together, or it's going to be a city log or a city audit group, not the police department. One way or the other, however city council decides and the mayor decides, that use will be logged. So all of that, if the camera's moved around and it's misused in someone's opinion, then we'll know who was on the camera at the time. We'll have the footage of what that alleged misuse is, and we'll be able to do something about it. Correct?
Those other logs, are they available at public disclosure?
Yes.
Sorry, and specifically, is that a write-only logging system? Once the logs are written, is it possible to edit the logs? Or is there a system in place to prevent the logs from being edited?
That's a good question.
Monty, at least I can tell you what I was told, and my understanding is the vendor is an automated log that you have to have certain rights to get into to even access. So theoretically, it's automated and it's already done. But there'll be, if you log in to edit the log, there's a log in that. So it should just be a write only, but in the end, we'll have to look into that.
Yeah, if you're talking about me being able to go in and edit the log,
Right.
no, it's something that's automated. So, and again, that'll be available for public disclosure, and it'll be available for the people that audit the system's use. So, the people that have view-only privileges, and I'm probably getting a little bit ahead of the discussion, if they're people who can only watch the cameras and they can't steer them and they can't go back and review recorded footage or anything like that, it'll just be their log on that's captured. People that's actually steering the camera, whose activities will be recorded per camera. Any questions? So there's 4 cameras and 4 wireless access points around the Columbia Center as part of the Center grant. Same equipment, same technology, same audit, same everything. It's going to be treated as the same as the port security network. Chinatown in the International District raised their own money and bought their own system. They're using the same camera housing that we are. They have the same wireless network that we do, but it's their network. On their cameras, they're also using privacy masking. They set it up themselves. They will allow us to log in to see the cameras if there's been a crime. So, for example, we've captured 100%. There's been 2 armed robberies since last August, and a burglary spree where 6 people were arrested, where the cameras provided video evidence of those crimes.
Isn't that considered trapwire, part of the trapwire program?
No.
Could you explain what trapwire is and how that's different from trapwire?
Trapwire is a program that's run by the feds, and
Isn't this a
these
federal grant
what's that?
overseen by Homeland Security?
There's money from FEMA to build the network, but they don't have any login access to it. And the city council has been very clear about that. They haven't asked, we haven't offered, and they don't have it. The Coast Guard will look at the cameras, but they will also see it in view-only mode.
Can any private entities use it for, like,
Could you clarify which system you're talking about when you say, are you talking about International District, Tripwire, or the one that we're talking, our port camera?
oh, no, so you're saying that's the difference between trapwire and this system?
Our system has nothing to do with Trapwire.
Now, wasn't trapwire implemented in Seattle at one point?
Not that I'm aware of. No.
So trapwire was never tested
I
or...
don't have any control over it. I'm not involved in it. I wasn't invited to play. I wasn't made aware of anything.
Can you kind of give us the background and how...
I think you
So
sound
why
like you
don't
know
you
more about
know
Trapwire. You want to tell us what Trapwire is to do?
No, you're in charge of it.
I'm not in charge of Trapwire. I don't have anything to do with it.
No, I mean, you're in charge of the program here.
Sir, what he's trying to say is,
But we
So we
don't
can't
know
answer
the difference.
I can't answer about trap wire.
I think what you're concerned about, one of the functions of TrackWire is that it's gathering video data and processing it for analysis. And
But also private companies are involved with the surveillance. Is that the case with this network?
These are all
Private companies.
these are all video cameras.
Well, hold on.
Exactly.
International District is theirs. The port security is ours.
So does International District, do those private entities get funding from Homeland Security or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Direction from Homeland
Not that I'm aware.
I think there's a small city grant from the Department of Neighborhoods, but I'm not even 100% sure on that. Most of that was $5 and $10 donation from the people that live there. So it's their system. They can allow us to view the video if they want. They can tell us to pound sand.
So our city allows private citizens to record people in public and keep those and give them to the police.
Yeah, it's not
And that's
against the
going to
law.
prevent crimes. Is that is the intention of that to prevent crimes, or is?
I think the Chinatown committee would have to speak to the intent of their.
But when do you use police officers?
I'll take that one.
Cameras.
I'll take that one, Monty. Cameras can prevent crime, although I'll tell you right now, they won't prevent all crime. However, it does become a great investigative tool
How
in
can
the
they
future.
prevent crime?
Because the bad guys know that the cameras are there and that information
So then they
is
move
recorded.
somewhere else to commit crimes.
Actually, many cities have found that the displacement isn't the same. So they see a crime reduction overall. Yes, there are people out there, unfortunately, that like to commit crime, and they're going to commit crime one way or the other. It's our job to try to apprehend them. Cameras assist in that investigation.
So how did the cameras stop the recent murder in London?
It did, unfortunately.
No, I think those people use the cameras to communicate their messages.
So I'm trying to get the cost-benefit analysis on this. Is it worth our tax dollars to implement this hugely costly and privacy-invading system?
And honestly, I will tell you, as the project sponsor, I do believe that this money is well spent. This money is allocated for that. There's other monies allocated for other projects, both, social support, etc. In this case, yes, we are doing it, and I do think it's a value.
How is it a value if it doesn't
Okay, I tell you what, how about we hit this after question and answer? Because I'd like Monty to be able to get through his stuff. But the truth of the matter is, I think there is a preventive value, and I think there's an investigative value. And to put a cost on that, I don't know that anyone could do that. But a number of cities are investing in this, and I think we should be one of them.
So, just a point of order that the New York Times reported on August 13, 2012, that the city of Seattle has partnered, or have partnered with the Department of Homeland Security to test the TrackWire system on 15 security cameras. So that's the New York Times.
I'm not involved in that. They don't have anything to do with this. I don't know what you're talking about. They may be right. I don't know. I'm not saying they're wrong. I just say I don't know. And what I am also saying is that they're not involved in the security cameras. The other 2 points I want to make about the cameras real quick is that one of the juries is maxed out for sale. To see more video and DNA and stuff like that, I think that's in part due to what they see on TV. So they have higher expectations. And the other part is the cameras only get small vehicles, and I think that's something that's very important. When the Cafe Racer incident happened, we had a poor description of the person who just shot 5 people inside the Cafe Racer, killing 4 of them and killed another woman further down the way. So after we were able to get still images from their security system, then now we know who we're looking for, and it can exclude us from having to stop people that kind of sort of maybe are this tall or that tall or fat or thin, wearing a blue shirt or red shirt. There's all sorts of descriptions that we're going on. So they're exculpatory as well. I think it just kind of evens the playing field if you want to look at it that way as well.
But when you talk about the private use of those cameras for surveillance in like a store or restaurant or a Cafe Racer, can you explain the difference between having a private owner pay for their own surveillance and then you being able to ask them, hey, you can help us solve the crime? Can you explain the difference between that and then having a publicly funded network of policemen posted on every corner? It's essentially a 24/7
But it's not
recording
recording.
everything and saving everything.
But we're not monitoring them actively. So if there's an incident that's in progress, we can go to the cameras, but there's no one sitting at the police department who's just going to sit there.
But it's keeping the recordings for 90 days.
It's keeping recordings for 30 days. And if there's video that when the cameras are moved, then that video segment will be exported and that will be kept for 90 days. The log will be kept for 90 days so that their use, the audio use can go along with that video clip. The difference is to me pretty simple. A store owner goes to Costco or Fry's or some other place and spends $500 or $600 on a camera system that records okay. And the store owner isn't interested in the activity that's going on in the street, they're interested in what's going on inside of his or her store. And I've recovered a lot of video from stores. One, for example, in Alpine, close to where we put a camera near the bamboo, is there were shots being fired by this guy in the area of the bamboo. And I used the store video. You can see him pointing the gun and you see the muzzle flash and stuff. But you're using a camera that's inside the store, looking out the window at night with other obstructions and stuff in the way, including just the window frame itself. So it's giving you bits and pieces of the information. If we use a publicly funded camera, as you're talking about, something that we get to choose the quality of, which is more of an industrial strength camera as opposed to a $400 or $500 analog system. Somewhere that we have a good view of what's going on, gives us a better perspective.
So depending on where you live in the city, you will have a police camera stationed outside your residence 24/7 capturing everything that's available.
Well, that's the other piece too, and then I'll move on. The cameras don't look 360 degrees. They look at a slice of the pie. Port security cameras, for the most part, are going to be pointed at the water.
But if you live there, they're recording your comings and goings.
It's not pointed at where you're coming and going from. So the one at 61st and Alpine, for example, it's going to face the water. And you're going to be able to log onto a public website 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and you're going to see a still image produced from that camera every couple of minutes. And you'll see exactly what that camera's looking at.
So it's just looking at water.
What's that?
They're all just looking at water.
Not all of them, but most of them are. So the one in Faultleroy Ferry Terminal, for example, Washington State Ferries approached us and asked if we could point the camera along Faultleroy or in front of the street in front of the ferry terminal. Yeah. Keep a wide view, and
And how far can they see out to the water? Like what's the range of
It just depends on how it's zoomed. But the point is, for this particular camera, they're asking, and we don't have approval to do it yet. And they want to traffic it. And then we can show those images and they can post them on the city website to give someone a view of what's going on, how long is the line for the ferry terminal. If there's an incident that occurs and we need the camera, then we'll steer away to what we need to do, and then it will go back to that position we're at. So again, we're looking for multiple uses of it. So for the police will use it, the fire department will use it, transportation will use it. It's not just a police camera. We're trying to have a lot of different people look at it, which I think will minimize the chance of abuse and maximize its effectiveness for the benefit of all of us. So just a couple more slides to finish up. Mayor McGinn and County Executive Dow Constantine announced in December of last year the expansion of Rapid Ride line through downtown Seattle, and that'll be along 3rd Avenue, and they're using our network to do that. So along that route, it's functional. They're aiming for September. Not sure that they're going to get there. They may. You'll have less information. You'll be able to buy overpasses, that kind of stuff along 3rd Avenue. Again, as I said, on the Ballard Bridge here, on this corner, will be one of the cameras. So this bridge operator, for the first time, will be able to see what's going on before they open the bridge. Seattle Fire Department is going to have a couple of uses for this network. The cameras will be helpful for them if they're responding to an incident on the water. And there was a kayak rescue at 61st and Alki, I believe about 6 weeks ago, something like that. It would have been right in front of the camera if that was operational. So for that kind of stuff. Their fire trucks will connect to the network in downtown. So So that'll be their primary laptop communication network when they're within range. And that includes whenever they're on Alki, if they're within when they're within coverage of the network. The exciting thing to me with the fire department is they're going to use their life packs to connect to the network. As it stands now, when they're treating a heart attack victim, they record all of that information, all the heart data and stuff. They record the communication between the paramedics. They write a heart review, then they upload that information to a server once they've arrived. Now, they'll be able to use this live in the field. So the doctors at heart review will be able to see this heart data in person and be able to better help the patients that are going through this. I was told by the fire department they think that might be just enough to bump the heart attack survival rate in Seattle to just over 50%. That's their goal. So, and that's the extent of my presentation. I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Thanks for the presentation. Is there any evidence base for these type of cameras preventing terrorist attacks? I couldn't find any when I've done my research. Preventing, now I know they can record them and help, find the culprits, but do they prevent them at all?
I think, I'm not sure that there's concrete evidence for that because we don't know where in the planning cycle the plan may have been interrupted because they saw cameras and they thought it might compromise their planning and their execution. I think the recent beheading in London shows that they actually used the cameras, to show off what they were doing. And they talked to the public when we were out there with cell phone cameras and stuff. So that was kind of a medium that they wanted to exploit. So, but for day-to-day crime and that kind of stuff, we also expect that there may be an impact there. Real quick, and then I'll get to when we're doing the RFP process, we would call my references for the individual contractor. So I talked to a St. Louis alderman who explained they had a district in St. Louis where they had 21 homicides the previous year. They installed a wireless network with cameras, and then the next year they had 0. Now, I don't expect that everywhere, don't get me wrong, but I think it can have an impact. And the other part of it is after the fact, if we're using it as evidence, when it's publicized that these cameras can be used as evidence, that may also add to the deterrent value. Sure.
So the point of the trapwire system is specifically to catch criminals who are terrorists in planning stages of their attack. That is exactly how it is built. And it is supposed to use cameras from public and private sources. So I'm not saying that I don't believe you that you say that the trapwire system has no interface with this security camera. But I also think that it's really important to make it clear that there is a system that does use public and private camera data to profile terrorists using facial recognition and a bunch of other intelligence. So I think that this is a...
But I think what you need to do is you need to reiterate that that's not our system. We are not doing that. And we've already told you before, we're telling you again, we are not running any video analytics on our videos. That's just it. And quite honestly, I'm not 100% sure that the video analytics capability is as good as the vendors say it is. So in this case, it's showing video, and that's what we're doing.
And I think our system is fairly unique in the country. I haven't exhaustively researched them all, but I don't know of any other cities where they're using privacy masking on their system. I don't know of any that are publishing still live images from all of their cameras 24/7, or have civilian oversight, or have sat down and chatted with the ACLU in advance.
Or have not.
Right, what?
Or all of them that have not built into the system that theoretically we can't get to. I say theoretically because some IT guy will probably come and go, oh, I can hack that credit. Maybe that's the case, but the idea is we're trying to put enough safeguards in place that we don't have to worry about those other issues.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, I just wondered if is there a battery callback system if the power grid goes down? Do they keep running and if they're first responder type equipment?
So the cameras do have batteries, and they can operate for up to 16 hours. The wireless network does not have any batteries, so that would not function. Most of the cameras are connected via fiber, so they should continue to operate unless there's something catastrophic that occurs. And over time, the length of the battery, or the ability of the battery to sustain 16 hours will diminish. It's something that will be maintained if that's something that we need.
I just have another question about public disclosure. I'm sorry, I'm so obsessed with it.
That's why we're here.
I was wondering about, you said the logs are going to be available for public disclosure requests. So I was wondering about the actual data, the footage, if that'll be available for public disclosure, and also if it'll be possible to get a list of all of the different agencies. You mentioned the state ferries and WashDOT, SDOT, but all of the different agencies that will have access to the data. Is there any way that that's listed that the public can look at, or will it be?
That's part of the presentation to City Council, so City Council has to know everybody that's playing. And State Ferries hasn't been formally approved yet. They're asking if they can leverage our cameras as well. So the final decision is Mayor McGinn's in City Council, and all of that's going to be open.
So the participants will become public information once it's finalized. Anyone that joins the system, so I think of the jurisdiction, if they want to join it, they have to follow our rules. So they have to sign an MOU that says that. In terms of the information that is recorded, anything that's pulled out, as long as it's not part of a criminal investigation, then it can be public disclosed.
Thanks.
Okay. Go ahead.
With all due respect to the alderman, I'm also wondering about whether there's any actual, study data that supports any of these claims that crime is reduced.
I think there's been a bunch of studies done, and I think some of them support that it positively impacts the crime rate, and I think some of those studies show that it has a negligible effect.
Did you or the city consult these studies when you were involved in planning this program?
Yeah, I reviewed some of them, yeah. The biggest one is IACP put out a publication, and it had both pros and cons, and you have to weigh the benefits of it. The funny thing with crime is it's really, really hard to prove the exact cause, because if we could do that, we'd prevent a lot more crime.
No.
So the variables are very great, and so research analysts are having difficulty saying the key factor was the cameras. So I know that they're looking at it and they're trying to find research sites to be able to do that. However, what we do know is some people talk about, oh, we don't go down there because there's cameras down there. Bad guys say that. We see some drop in crime, right? We did in some of the cities reported that they had a large drop here and small increases somewhere else, but not enough to match the amount of crime that they lost over here. So it really comes down to what we want to do is make sure that it's a preventive tool for some aspects of it, but a great investigative tool. But in addition to that, it becomes a response capability. So PD and Fire, Coast Guard, WADOT, depending on who it is, can monitor the cameras and see what's going on, and there hopefully we can increase our response effectiveness overall.
So only bad guys should be afraid of the camera network.
I don't hear well enough, guys say it again.
So only bad guys should be afraid of having 24/7 surveillance cameras.
No, I don't have a problem with the citizens being concerned that we have cameras out there. But what's not getting told is that we have a number of safeguards put in place, including privacy masking. I've been in 3 major cities in the last month. They all have cameras, none of them have privacy masking.
So if somebody's not doing anything wrong, they shouldn't worry about
I don't think so.
24/7 surveillance.
Well, I don't think so. There are a number of cameras out there already, and the private sector does. They can put up cameras, and by law, they can record anything that's in plain sight, as long as there's not certain limitations. But their concern, well, just one second, their concern usually is their venue. Our concern is the general public at large. So we're trying to put our cameras out in public areas, monitor public spaces for bad behavior, and that's what we're looking for.
So if somebody's not doing anything wrong, they shouldn't be afraid of being surveilled 24/7 by police cameras.
But they're not being surveilled. Being surveilled means I'm monitoring that individual throughout a period of time for a specific purpose. And it's just watching the general area, but quite honestly, if anyone was there, could watch the same thing.
So just having a camera pointed at you and recording you, and that tape being saved by the police department is not any type of surveillance. It's considered something other.
Here's my point.
I'm trying to get.
I think you're trying to get us to say something, let me just be blunt about this. I don't care what you do. I really don't. If you're
But that's usually what, thousands of others have capability.
well, then their activities will become apparent if they're misusing the camera and they're punished. That's why it's transparent.
Won't that be after the harm done, though? Is there going to be
I
a
can't
camera
even
on
argue this the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a number of safeguards that are in place that, quite honestly, you don't have right now. If you want to take this UAV and fly it outside of your bedroom window tonight, there's nothing I can really do to stop it. However, if I try to do that, I get charged with a felony and I get a big trouble for it. So there's the difference between civilian and government. We're doing it, we have safeguards in place, there's audit log, you can do a public disclosure request, we have external people coming in and reviewing the material. The idea here isn't for us to spy on anyone. It's to be able to provide an opportunity to prevent crime where we can, monitor in progress events if it's pertinent enough, and then have a great investigative tool later. And then while we're out there, if something happens, we can increase our response by monitoring the scene.
So, but what's now, isn't there an historic low in crime rate here in Seattle?
Crime is going down.
It's something like, is it 50 years where the low?
I don't think it's quite that long anymore, but it is low. However, and this is the part, yeah, we love to say the crime's going down because we're doing stuff right. We, when I say that, I mean the community at large, because we're not doing it alone. Hope you know that. We have great community partnerships and good things are happening out there. But in the end, yeah, it's going down, but every crime hurts someone. Okay? Every crime hurts someone. So we do. We want to shoot for a zero crime rate. Now, these cameras are in the public venue.
So zero crime rate is possible in Tara.
If you can help me get there, I'll work there with you.
Let's ask another people asking questions. And we can talk.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I'm trying to figure out the value of this.
Okay, well, we can talk offline all we want, but we only have limited time here, and I want everybody to be able to ask a question. Go ahead.
I have three major concerns, if I would just state them. One of the things that Mayor McGinn said, there would be no operation of the system until a thorough vetting was done. Yet I kind of had the feeling from you that this is going to go in place and this is informational for that. And also that the port security purpose of it was, you had said 450 feet or something with the distance, and I was wondering at the actual usability of a photo, an image from that distance, that would it be of any use? Or if it's be used for surveillance of city streets and public property around the area, instead of the port of Seattle, I wish it would state that clearly, because it doesn't seem to make sense to me. 450 feet out of the water doesn't get you much visual acuity, or,
But if they know what you want to look at, you want to see a boat that's on fire, that's enough information. They're looking for that kayaker or see.
but that doesn't seem to balance out with, like some people have mentioned, the cost benefit, because everybody can see the boat on fire, binoculars or a camera.
We can't until we're there.
Right.
And we have to decide how many people to send it. Like that kayaker that was in trouble, there were 13 different rigs sent. So that means there's 13 vehicles running lights and sirens to go off this one person. And if they could have secured the camera on him and saw that he was coming in on his own power, they could have at least sent a bunch of
Okay,
them. So my point is, for these purposes, I think we can argue all day. So
I just want to make this point.
So let me answer one of them, because I don't want you to make the question I answered. You said, well, we're going to use it for general surveillance of city property or something.
maybe related to an anarchist or may have been on a certain website looking up how to make bombs or doing something that you feel is really suspicious to you and you follow them around. Now, is that justifiable to keep for 30 days? Is the video be used, will that be used for that?
Videos kept for 30 days. If someone moves the camera, in our policy, we'll take the camera, the video that's moved by that camera, and we'll save it for 90 days. So that stays in the library. So that other people
That's for the audit.
Yeah. So
For the audit purposes, so we know what they went around. If he
Stand
moved,
a little bit here because the light is shining. I
Oh.
can't really see your face. Okay, thank you.
so that's for the audit, we put it in for 90 days to make sure that you have the opportunity to go back and audit what they looked at. Oh, I looked at criminal activity, and they weren't, then we know that, right? We go back. So that's what he means when you were asking what we'll hold it 90 days. We would keep it for that, for the audit purposes, not for evidentiary purposes or anything else.
right. But if the camera sees something that is evidence of a crime, then it will be pulled and will be put into evidence, just like we were recovering video from a grocery store or someone's cell phone or something like that. So that's part of chain of custody, and it goes through that process, just like photographs and fingerprints and everything else does. But we don't profile. You're using that word, and the policy that we have for this, there's a lot of racial and social justice language in there. So if the cameras are used to profile, as you're calling it, if there's no reason to look at a person, then someone can decide that that's misuse of the system, and that person can be punished in a lot of different ways. So
That's in your policy. You
And
won't be using it to identify activists or anything like that.
Are they criminal activists or political activists?
Well, what line do you draw?
Political, well, I can't, under city ordinance, I can't do it for political activists. If I'm an activist, May Day is a great example. They're saying, oh, it's freedom of speech. It's freedom of speech right up until you violate the law. Probably, yeah, just a second.
Nobody was
Just
recorded by.
just a second. So they break property damage or do property damage that's not theirs, or they assault someone. That is not political activism. That's assault or property damage, and we can keep that video if we want.
The videos of that last May Day are online, and everybody can go see how the police use pepper spray and sprayed reporters, right?
Not this last one, we just sort of reported, no.
Erica Barnett from Publicola.
She was in a place where they sprayed it, they didn't spray the reporter, they sprayed to stop something else, when she did get covered.
What were they spraying for? I read in the newspaper that
Let's talk
said
about
it was
that.
to move the line back. It was not that anybody.
I would be happy to talk about that because I have some of the opinions in this. I'll talk about
Okay.
it.
So we'll talk about it later, but the idea here is that you can pull it out for evidence, or you can keep it for 90 days if somebody moves the camera, otherwise it's automatically looking at it for 30 days.
Sure.
Okay, so I noticed that this is a port security system, and the one agency I've only heard of come up once tonight was the Port of Seattle. I'm wondering why it's a City of Seattle police camera rather than a Port of Seattle police camera, and what you're doing to work with them.
Because 90% of the shoreline, shorefront, waterfront is in the city, and the piers are owned by the Port of Seattle. But if I'm going to do nefarious acts, I have to be able to get there and walk on our sidewalks. So it's a joint effort between us and the Port of Seattle. They're good partners, although it's ours, it was our idea, it's our city. I have the duty to protect the city, and I take it serious, and I think this is a worthwhile project. So that's why. I think you're next.
Yes, so for the purpose of stopping violent crime, particularly in the case of like an active shooter, is there a reason why you didn't put a gunshot detection system integrated with this camera system? Even before like having one of those expensive direction finding systems that can pinpoint and triangulate.
So which you just want an audible detector?
Why not have, if a gunshot is heard, that you do a sweep of the camera and record everything? Because there's going to be a delay, right? There's a gunshot, someone calls 911, they get the location, they notify someone who has access to the camera, that person logs into the camera, hand over, and by then who knows what's happening. Why not have the system respond, not with a microphone per se, but with a system that would detect a gunshot?
Well, you need a microphone to do that. You need not a microphone like what's around here. Those microphones won't.
With a barometric pressure, or not with a barometric pressure, with a pressure detector that is not sensitive to verbal.
You might know something I don't know, but I do know that the systems that I looked at, because I looked at it twice on behalf of the city, years ago, and then just recently when council asked for information on it, and both of them used auditory signatures because they're more accurate and you can trace them back. So probably get less false positives with the audio signature as opposed to the pressure wave. So I don't know much about the pressure wave system, so if you want to send it to me, I'll read it. Why didn't we do it on this one? I just didn't. This is a port security grant. We were trying to keep it just to monitoring the area and wireless mesh. That was what it was. So earlier on, I looked at automatic gunfire locator and it wasn't qualifying under the grant. And then recently it has been approved. But in the meantime, when I looked at it the first time, it wasn't allowable. So I couldn't spend the money on that. But I can on cameras.
Did you have a question, sir?
I'm immediate.
And I saw your hand.
No, I'm just waiting to move my.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can still ask your question.
No, actually, no. The principle is that we are here for the people who cannot be here. We also have access to you at times at whenever whenever he wants to pick up the phone. So no, but that's why we wait until afterwards.
There you go.
Okay.
Good.
Well, how are the locations of the devices, the cameras specifically, how are they decided on?
I'll let Monty do the technical aspect. I need to be able to monitor the waterfront area, the port area, the key transfer sites, etc., and then the general waterways coming into and out of Elliott Bay. So that was my big broad picture of it. So the technical aspect, without going into detail.
Well, as far as the big picture, then I'm just wondering, why is there nothing out along Discovery Park?
Because there's no fiber out there, and it would be very expensive to build an infrastructure that's in place.
Okay. But I do have overlapping views, so I can get up to the point from two different ways.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not perfect by any means, but still.
Okay.
Being at the tip of Discovery Point would be great because you'd have a great view of the waterway, the ships and stuff coming in. But there's very little infrastructure out there, and we had to build some fiber into this, but there's a finite amount of money that's available.
But when I envisioned it, just for the record, it was all the way around. So that theoretically, again, you have to look at terrorist events from around the world, you could track suspicious vessels and stuff all the way in if you wanted.
Are there vessels on Rainier Avenue?
I don't have cameras
on Rainier Avenue.
I understand you're not happy with the system, but
I'm just trying to get there to.
But I will tell you
the answer.
Just a second. James Kelly, when he worked for the Urban League, was in the newspaper, and you can run it. He wants cameras down on Rainier and Henderson for the community down there because he sees it as a violence prevention act. It never happened, but he was asking for it.
So they're not one of those.
There's going to be wireless.
It's not part of this.
There's going to be wireless access points along Rainier Avenue between Jackson and Henderson. SDOT is putting those into place for Rapid Beach. There are no cameras part of their project, but their access points will look a lot.
And if they do add cameras later, they still have to follow the city ordinance the same way that we have.
I had a related question about the locations. What were these two that you mentioned? Was it two that were
So they
originally
just-
planned and are not being installed?
It just didn't work out, yeah. One was up here, and one was down on Hellcat.
And what was the problem?
Just technical stuff, overlapping and stuff.
Okay, so these
One
two
was here in the
missions
park.
up here are not, neither one of those is ever going to have a camera on it?
There's going to be one outside the park, but
Outside the park.
there was-
Outside the park.
Outside the park. There was talk of putting it inside the park. When they told me, I said, we don't put cameras in the park because it's a violation of city limits.
Okay.
So it's not going to happen.
And the one at the Alfalfa?
That one just didn't work out technically. You had your hand up first before her, and then I'll go back.
Yeah, so at one of the first presentation that you did, there was mention that there might be public Wi-Fi access provided through this system, but that was something that was being considered as, what's the status of that?
There's not going to be public Wi-Fi on this network, at least at this point. There's no funding to bring that amount of bandwidth to the network for that use.
But again, the system could be used for that. You had multiple use for the system. It's pretty robust. And again, we're trying to stay focused in a very narrow bandwidth, monitoring the security on the waterways and the shoreline for that. And then the communication part was, in the event something happened, we increased communication. So, okay, we have one right behind you first, and then we'll be back.
Yeah, I was going to ask, because I know that there is that ordinance that requires ordinance authority to install cameras in parks, which is why I think we can have one right out there. I'm wondering, I understand the words of that law, but what about the intent of that law? I mean, down in West Seattle, we have two parks that are within just, feet of Elk Bay Beach Park and Constellation Park. And I'm wondering, and they absolutely have the capability of surveilling, I shouldn't say surveil, but watching civilians, their activities. And I'm wondering, doesn't that violate the intent of that law? I know that law was created after the Cal Anderson Park experiment, where the city auditor found that, they weren't efficacious, and there was a huge public outcry. And so I feel like people did a lot of work to create a law to protect civilians who are in public spaces who are being watched. And I'm wondering, do you think those cameras down in the Alki area violate the intent of that law?
I don't think so, because their primary mission there is to watch out over the waterways, and they're going to be looking past the park area.
I mean, you can stand there, and I walk there all the time. It's right by the Statue of Liberty, which is ironic. I mean, you can see people. I've stood in the camera, right where the camera is, and taken pictures. And, I mean,
But see, you could do that. That's the point. It's out in public.
Yeah.
So you or whoever can stand out there and do the same thing.
It's true, but I can't hover off, 20 feet off the ground and never sleep and communicate that information to, 180 spots around the city. And also communicate that to Metro, to the court, to you guys. And that's it seems to go above and beyond what a plainclothes officer could do.
But we're not cataloging your presence there. We're not using any video analytics, so we don't know that it's you there. Probably will not be watching you walk by there. If there's an incident or something, then we'll use the camera. If there's not, it's going to record when it detects motion. If it doesn't detect motion, it's not going to record. At the end of 30 days, it just goes away. There's nothing put to it so that we can catalog your every move. And as I said earlier, and I mean this with all due respect, I don't care. I really don't. I want us to have the tools that we need in place to do our jobs better and more effectively, to prevent things that we can, to respond to things when we do, provide evidence to the court when the juries and stuff are asking for more from us. And I think combining that with the transparency that we're bringing to this makes it very different from many other systems. And again, if you can see still images of these cameras too, so I think you'll be underwhelmed as time goes by. If you keep watching it, there's really probably going to be a whole lot of nothing with spikes of, oh my gosh. And it's those oh my gosh situations that we would like to have these tools available for.
Yeah, I understand that for like a desolate shipping area. That makes sense. I'm wondering, you talked about the 2 cameras that aren't going to go in. Is it still an option to not have those 2 down in the Alki area, which is well populated, well observed? And we have the West Seattle vlog. West Seattle is such an engaged community. The kayak rescue, I mean, the community came together and gave information about that. We have our eyes on that water all the time. It's
right, but you're not a firefighter. So at the fire alarm center where they take that 911 call.
I'm talking about preventing terrorism. I thought that was the purpose of
It
it.
is brought the kayak example. I was just addressing that.
Okay.
So if a firefighter can see that they're walking through, they can justify, okay, let's send an APAR and an engine and make sure that the guy's okay, or the gal's okay. We don't have to send the other 10 vehicles. We don't have to, we can minimize the risk to the public of running lights and sirens, speeding through intersections and that kind of stuff. So all of those things come into play. But the bottom line is Mayor McGinn and City Council have the final say. This has not been approved, and we still have to go to them, and they have different choices that they can make.
Actually,
Oh, I'm sorry.
she was supposed to.
Technical question. You mentioned that a private camera could see the gunshot go off, and I'm wondering if these cameras can see at night, and how is it sort of evidence that could be admissible in court into seeing the detail of a person's face? Because I know that you said the public, there's an expectation the public has now of seeing a camera face, but everything that I've seen posted in a publication of a camera, it's been too grainy for me to say definite, beyond criminal proof burden, beyond reasonable doubt that it is that person. So what does it show at night? What does the camera show? And will it stand up to court in court?
The answer to all those questions is it depends. It depends on the amount of lighting available. These cameras cannot see in the dark. They don't have any infrared capabilities or anything like that, so they use the ambient lighting in order to provide the imaging they need. So if it's a bright sunny day, then the cameras are going to see great. If the cameras are pointed towards the water and it's at night and there's no moon, if the moon is dark, it may see very little. It might see little lights going by. If there's a report of something going on at Alpine and they spin the camera around really become an issue. So there's kind of a balance thing going on. Quality with it. If the camera's pointed this way, the action's over here, then these cameras that we deploy may not actually see what happens. So it depends, or maybe somebody calls in advance because there's a fight brewing, so the sergeant spins around to see what's going on while his or her officers are responding, and then maybe there's a shooting or stabbing that occurs, and then that's caught on video. Maybe not. You know, somebody at the outside meeting asks if they call 911 because there's something going on outside, how long will it take us to get a camera on the action? And my answer was maybe seconds or maybe never. There could be something in between. So again, it's a tool. It's not a catch-all, save-all. It's going to make everything magically better. It's just another tool. And we're trying our best to implement it in a responsible way.
To answer on that, we have one camera that's going to have thermal capabilities. It's going to be on the Washington State Ferry system, we believe. We're working that out. And it's pointed toward the water. And it's in support of the ferry part.
Their camera. That's part of the grant. That's their camera.
So in pointing it out there, so that's out there on the waterfront. But again, it's out on the end of the pier, pointing towards the water. It's a ferry passenger or something like that, or they happen, et cetera. So there is one, but ours are not. The 30 that we're talking about, actually, I think it's the 28. They're not thermal and all that kind of stuff.
Point of clarification on the, just following what you talked about, Monty.
Say it now.
Cal Anderson Park had cameras up, police cameras, and
There were police cameras, there were parks cameras.
And actually, there was only one.
Go ahead.
so what's the difference between the community not wanting that and getting it, taking it away, and what we're having now?
Because these are police cameras.
Right, but it's the city, and they said that all the city departments can access them.
Well, not all the city departments. What this is it's set up for a specific mission on the shoreline, right? Watching that for the port security aspect. Is there a possibility that in the future they may want to add more cameras throughout the city? Yeah, you bet. But I haven't been approached.
So what were the objections to the Cal Anderson cameras, and why?
People didn't want them in the park.
Why didn't they want them in the park?
You'd have to ask all the different people that said it, they didn't like the idea. And so they limited it to, there was one camera in the center of the park. And one time that we needed it, when I was in the east, just after I left, they could face the water fountain because the camera was pointing at the third base or something. And it was pointing in the wrong direction. Quite honestly, the camera deployment for the park was wrong. Recently, we've had, I think, Sean, 3 stabbings in Cal Anderson.
There was 2 stabbings and then a sexual assault, attempt sexual assault.
So those cameras would have prevented those stabbings and
Well, I don't know if they would have, though, might have been able to get identification on the sexual assault suspect. And you're right, we might not get a perfect high-glossy 8x10 of Paul McDonough as the suspect. But we get enough information, hopefully, off these images that it limits the pool and it gives something for the follow-up detectives or the responding patrol officer or something to look. Okay, it's not perfect by any means, like Monty said.
So I just want to make sure everyone else this is a geeky question. Is the video information that these cameras are, you said that there's a camera and then there's a DVR system. Is that DVR system inside of the camera enclosure, or is that in a secure undisclosed location?
It's secure and disclosed location.
Part of that also is there any kind of persistent video data that's stored on the camera itself, or is that all immediately sent off, like stored in volatile memory and then sent off?
It actually, the camera, for the geeky answer, it has capability to put a memory card in there, but we have not. So if this were, for example, if we were to have cameras inside the precincts and the holding cells, interview rooms, that kind of stuff, I would recommend that we put a memory card in there, because if the camera loses network connection, it can write to the card, and then when it comes back online, then it can push that data that wasn't recorded at the time, or at least several images, if not the full motion video, at least images, so that we're doing our best to make sure that there's no gaps in the video, especially when there's someone in that interview room.
But the short answer is these cameras don't have it. Even I got them.
They have the capability, but we're not using them.
I just wanted to ask about the email account that you guys set up for cameras. I'm just wondering if you were getting a lot of email to that address, and if so, what the general gist of feedback was?
I would say, I think we've had 19 or 20 total responses. 3 or 4 of them have been supportive. The others have not. I've got more spam in that account, literally, than I have responses from the community. But I've gotten some good email both ways. There's a condominium complex on Alaskan Way that has a camera outside of it, and they're very concerned about it. So I'm going to go meet with them and talk to them about it. If City Council, and this applies to all of the neighborhoods, if they approve the cameras, then I want to go to the neighborhoods where the cameras are at, and I want to show them what the camera can see. I want them to see what it can't see so that they know what's going on specifically. And again, everybody will have the access to this television on the website.
And then another question that I recall was that the first presentation you did, you mentioned that there was an aerial video downlink that was funded by this grant that you didn't mention this evening, and that's still existent or it's going to be deployed.
Yeah, it exists.
Is that correct?
It exists. Basically, it's an expansion of the current system that we already have. It upgrades it so that Guardian 1, King County's helicopter, has a downlink, and we can take that downlink or something from WSP.
Right. So instead of just having a video recording in the helicopter,
you can see
you would then have to download once it landed, be able to do a live stream before the.
So, and here's why. In 2009, police responded to a wooded area outside of North Gate Mall, and there were 2 people actively shooting at that time. It was dark. So Guardian 1 is overhead, and with your camera they can see where these two people are at.
And that's because of the thermal camera.
It does have a thermal capability.
Guardian 1 has thermal.
Right. The SWAT officers can't see into the woods. They don't know where these people are at times. And so it's a big game of arm with polo. So if we can see what the helicopter can see, then they can make better tactical decisions based on that. If there's a vehicle pursuit and the helicopter is in the air, then they can watch the car. We don't have to be right on the tail. We can back off and try to slow down that incident. But all of the uses for that system have to be related to a crime. So they're not going to just fly overhead and just look at everything, and we're going to sit there like, hopefully you can see somebody walking on Alki or something like that. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, because helicopters are expensive to fly and have big tail number on the back.
And King County serves the region. So they're in Seattle very little. We have to call them. So if we have a pursuit, if we have a shooting or something, then that would be very handy to have their perspective so that we can see what's going on there.
And then other thing was you had mentioned that there was a thermal camera that is being mounted at the end of the pier at the Washington State Ferries. And previously that thermal camera was going to be on a mobile boat, or is there still one?
Well, there's. Go ahead. You can talk about that. I'll talk about the boat.
So there's one long-range thermal camera that Washington State Ferry will own. It's theirs. And then we purchased 3 more.
Sorry, is that part of this grant, or it's just?
Yeah, it's just part of this grant. There are multiple agencies benefiting from this grant, not just us. And then Chief McGunn, we'll talk about the 3 cameras that we bought for harbor patrol for the boats.
So we mounted cameras on the boats. So theoretically, using this wireless mesh system, cameras on the boat can send what they're seeing in real time back to either the operations center, somebody on land, or the EOC. So we can patch that back. The win there is we don't run real big crews on the boats, but a couple people, maybe 3. Other agencies have 4 or 6 people on their boats. They have different deployment strategy. So we don't have anyone that can stand there and hold the camera. So put on the boat, point the boat toward what you're dealing with, and then you can do your job and we can help. That's what it is.
We'll also use it for, if there's a fire inside a boat, they'll be able to detect that. If there's a body in the water, they'll be able to find them sooner, especially at night. And for basic navigation, because there's logs and things that float around in the water, and they can use that to help avoid those things.
Are those boats used for drug interdiction? Are they used in conjunction with?
We could. We don't do a lot of drug interdiction down here. A lot of drug interdiction happens farther up the sound, but potentially it could happen here just because of the way the vessel traffic moves and when you get information. As a law enforcement officer on the water, we have the ability to do that. It doesn't happen very often. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, go ahead. I forgot your hand.
Are there any plans to put like a Seattle Police Department sticker or a sign saying you're being recorded on them? Because that seems it would both help reduce crime by letting the criminals know who's watching them, and have the uninformed citizens not be caught by surprise when they hear about this system.
Couple answers. As I said in the other meeting, I'm not opposed to it. Quite honestly, I didn't think it was that, I wasn't going to do it, but I can't. I don't think it's going to hurt the program. Uninformed citizens, I honestly, I've been to other cities and I'm standing there looking at their cameras, and people will stop and go, hey, what are you looking at? Oh, cameras. Oh yeah, they're everywhere, and they walk out. So uninformed surveys, was it Wall Street Journal, I think it was the New York Times, they did big surveys after Boston and the Boston attack. And 70% of the population says we're not really concerned about the cameras out there, provided, in my role, provided there's rules of engagement. So we just.
So you're saying they were conditioned?
I can't hear.
You're saying they were conditioned? You're saying the public was conditioned to accept?
No, actually, I didn't say that. I said the survey said that they were.
That's essentially what you said.
Actually,
you're using the Boston crime. It wasn't terrorism. It was a crime. It was committed in wide open, and cameras that were there already caught it, and people that were eyewitnesses told the police what happened. So I just don't appreciate using such a horrible, event of recent memory to kind of sell this network.
I appreciate it. And
it is proof that it doesn't prevent crime. So I'm trying to weigh why you would use the Boston incident to tell us, don't worry about police.
I didn't say that. I would say the survey was done after that incident, and that their information, not mine.
So you're saying the public was conditioned? That was my first comment.
I'm not saying that. I'm just reporting what they did.
That's the essence of what you said.
You're entitled to.
The public was conditioned to accept 24/7.
I think we're going to have to agree to disagree, because you're not going to let me get my side, and you're continuing going on. But I will just say this: I don't think that our addition of the cameras are going to have a negative impact. I think it's going to have a positive impact. I would support the project. However, with that, we are going to have a number of rules in place for the use of these cameras.
But Chief, we have 2 minutes before I need to start hacking up.
But using fear to sell something.
I'm not using fear.
No, but you described an event which happened in Boston, and then polls were taken after everybody was nice and scared from the media just having this 24/7 shown to them. So,
I don't know how I can answer you, because my response is you're not accepting, so I'm going to move on.
But what I'm hearing is you're saying
we're going to stop.
Be conditioned to accept being watched 24/7 and reported by police, guilty until proven innocent. That was the message I got.
I don't believe that for a second, so I'm going to move on to the next one.
Last question, and we'll talk later on afterwards, after we put all this
We
stuff.
actually physically have the space until 9, and we've got to get out.
So
Just before 9, so they can lock up.
I have a really good last question. So I'm pleased to get not to drag politics into this, but supposedly these are the thorough public vettings that Mayor McGinn promised. I'm wondering what happens to all the stuff you guys have heard. I've been blessed to hear you 3 times through this presentation now, but I'm wondering, is any of this going back up to anywhere, and how?
Well, I would say absolutely, and the fact that we're going to put the cameras, the images on the internet for everybody to see is not something that we were planning to do. And that's something that I would directly credit these meetings to doing. And these meetings have stirred more questions and stuff with City Council and the Mayor, so I think they're having a pretty dramatic impact.
And we've seen the ordinance come out about public use of cameras. So, I think a lot of good's coming out of it. Have we had a huge turnout? Not really. But we've had engagement, and we're drafting policy, which will be presented to the mayor and then to the council. And again, then they're going to discuss it again. So I think it's been valuable. Could it have been better? Or maybe.
And I'll jump in too. The cameras aren't running. They're being installed because they need to be installed. They are not operable. They're not working. They're not recording. And all this information goes back to us as we formulate the policies. The project still needs approval to move forward.
So you're a police officer as well?
That's right. I'm the public affairs guy. I'm sorry, I thought it was clear. Sean McKell, SPD Public Affairs, sitting right here.
So this information is being collected by the police right now, and it's helping you write your policies, and it's not actually so far getting any further outside the department or anything. think, right?
Actually, I think some of the people that are attending the meetings are doing a great job pushing the information out.
Well,
So, media's been at all three, right? Media's still here. So that's going out there. And again, I still stand behind the project, right? I think it's a valuable project, but it needs limitations. It needs control efforts. I get the big brother aspect. I get the fact that people don't like surveillance. But the other side is I'm tasked with protecting the community, and I'm going to do what I can with that, within reason. Okay? I'm not asking for Gestapo tactics. I'm not asking for any of that.
you can't have that. We're not-
Thank you. Good. I appreciate that. I don't want that. But I do think that what we're presenting is a reasonable alternative. So that's it. So with
Did you
that,
agree with the time and the place and the date for this?
did I? I had to, yeah, because it was the first one that we could actually get everything together, as I said at the beginning. And trust me, I had no intention of ruining everybody else's weekend. Mine's already ruined. So.
Space availability is
Yeah.
tight.
It's tough to get public forum. So.
But would it have been more prudent to have this at a time and a place where more of the public could come and
Which is why we also have
Having